and recorded. I also want to express my thanks to the finance team for putting all this together and all the department heads for their work, and of course Stephanie for all her hard work as well. And I think first on the agenda is the Park and Rec department.
No rest for the weary there.
No, I told you.
Hello, everyone. If you don't have a copy in front of you, I gave Stephanie some copies. This is pretty straightforward. I'm going to start with, go ahead, Ed. We're working toward the expense side now. We looked at the revenues already. And we have a lot of things going on outside the window. So where are we at now? We are actively engaged in day-to-day operations, standard process of providing recreation services, rentals, special events, external events. We just had a large special event this weekend with the Leukemia Lymphoma Foundation. So all of that continues, while at the same time there's a lot of balls in the air, a lot of spinning wheels going around, and we are actively engaged in preparation for both the coming online of the recreation center, as well as the reintroduction and expansion of the courts to include pickleball. It's a lot of planning. We've got the continuing research, site visits, professional dialogue, developing operational protocols for the CRC and the courts. We have now more or less, we refer to them more or less as as the facility, the Community Recreation Center and the courts, with the goal to drive more uses and users, and both facilities being used for future projects and programs. Formulating the rental fee structure, which will be included in your annual fee schedule for review. Active outreach engagement, trying to raise awareness, developing marketing and promotional materials, waiting on some floor plans, tables and chair plans, things like that, so we can start to put together an active use marketing piece. Trying to look at what a balanced program of rental use and program delivery looks like, leaning heavily initially, trying to drive rentals to drive a little bit more revenue while we grow and expand the program base, and a lot of continued discussion around service delivery, what the hurdles look like, what we're going to be up against. I have a lot of colleagues that have been through this. They've been very helpful in providing some information to help make things a little easier for us. Next page. This page you saw in the last presentation. So a lot of times we talk about program delivery, rental, external events, and so many people think, and it's a good thing when you open your program guide, the programs are there and away we go, but it's not often that a lot of people fully understand what goes into all that development and what the processes are. So these are our categories of service. We've thought long and hard about these, and they will grow to mean different things to different people. Next, I'm going to just talk a little bit about what program development looks like. This is for most all programs. Anybody doing a personal event or activity in your life, you could probably follow along similarly to what's here. And sometimes we refer to this as the program 12-step program, programming 12-step program. This is the same process, a little tweaks here and there, but basically this is a process that's followed. We're part of a program plan for every single program, event, or activity we deliver. This is standard across park and recreation profession. Unfortunately, this is not something I made up, and have had this great epiphany on how to do this. Sometimes the words change, but the process is the same, and it's an area that when we move a little bit forward that we've struggled with a bit because we have so many things going on. It's hard to sometimes really focus and get to that evaluation process so that we can become better and more thorough in what we do. And I think that the plan I have here today for your consideration will be helpful. So this doesn't matter, large programs, small programs, for example, any program, any small program could easily take 30, 40 hours. You don't sit down and you spend 30, 40 hours on it, but over the period of time. Something like the golf outing could take upwards of 200, 250 hours. Again, that's a much longer planning process. These steps overlap, they cross, they intertwine. This is going on all year long across various seasons. So just to give a frame of reference of what really happens when we're programming. It's a constant cycle, and our goal is to streamline some of the processes and go forward in a more organized and efficient manner so that we can better document, report, and grow and expand our programs. We have a pretty hefty goal to reach 5, 6 years down the road and want to make sure that we have best chance and success for that process. I know there were some questions. I know you've seen staff request and some job descriptions coming forward. We'll get a little bit further on that, which is why I'm including both of these pages. The rental process is not all that different from the programming process, and while there's fewer steps and components here, that doesn't mean that it doesn't pick up some of the components from the previous page. But again, this is ongoing cycle of outreach, partner relationship development. It's a continuous cycle that goes on all year long and overlaps from season to season and use to use, and trying to maintain that and build those relationships for ongoing use over time. There will be one-time uses, there may be large event uses, there could potentially be recurring uses, the athletic organizations. There's a lot of different potential uses that come in through rentals, and we are putting forth a conscious effort to make sure that we are in the best place to grow this arm of the facilities as well, and that includes both the building and the courts. We already, and other events. This is overall across the entire Park and Recreation Department, so I want to make sure that we realize that everything doesn't stop because we're going forward with the new facilities. Next page is the hard page, which is where I spent a lot of time with this presentation, but I also don't think that with where we've come in the years we've spent on this project that it'll be a huge surprise. 24 to 25, there are changes. There are changes in revenue. There are changes to expenses. As you can see on the chart, we do start to move forward, as we discussed in the revenue presentation, with the growth process and striving to reach our goal. And we are committed to growing our revenue over that first year. And just to so everybody understands, going into what we are looking at the first year, the startup year, when we're stepping into the pool and ramping up, this is an abbreviated year. We're anticipating about 8 months at this point. I think it's sometime around May we should start to be able to get into the facilities. So we will see some growth in revenue over this period of time, and that's a good thing. Along with new facilities, new amenities coming online, there are increased expenses. I could dance around it, but there's no point in doing that. We are requesting an increase in staff. It's a fairly minimal increase in staff that we're requesting. A startup, and that's what we're looking at. That's all we're looking at this point. But that's the only way we're going to grow. That's the only way we're going to grow, expand our base, and be able to competently monitor and make sure everything is running well within the facilities. The next line down, so that's the red line, the red square under the expense section. Then we move down to another new expense, which is the electric. There's not a whole lot I can say about that. We have new facilities coming online. There are utilities involved. And this is one of those areas, and that's the anticipated expense going into our first year. The next line down, it's a pretty big jump, but it includes all of our standard operations, all of our line items relative to operating the recreation department, There are some increases. This is where you see office supplies and uniforms and program guide printing and postage, all those types of things. But there is a pretty large expenditure that we are requesting approval to move forward with, and this is the equipment and supplies in the building. This is not the FF&E components. This is the equipment that will allow us to start to implement, create, implement, and grow programs. This is the sports equipment. This is the balls and the cages and the pickleball and the floor hockey and all the stuff that we're working towards implementing programs. We've been pretty careful about this in looking at the types of equipment that we could potentially use to run programs, as well as incorporate into drop-in programs, which is another component of the overall operation. This does not fall under the FF&E, but we don't grow very far if we don't have the appropriate equipment to get started. It did look at spreading that out over 2 years. There's also things like bleachers, which is a pretty large expense. I did look at spreading this out over 2 years, so that it wouldn't be a large hit, unless the board is so inclined to rip off the Band-Aid and we get it done. That's certainly your decision, but we were thoughtful about going into this, realizing there's other requests and other expenses throughout the township. The good news is, now this is all standard, this is normal, this is what happens when you're bringing on new facilities, and this is no exception. This, the first year would be around $21,000, second year would be about $19,000. We do have legitimate quote from a recognized supply company, which includes their discounts. So we didn't just guess. We didn't just sit around making up numbers in this case. The good news is it does get better. Over the next couple years, as we jump in, get started, ramp up, we'll fall into a more balanced operation. So this is where we're going to see the struggles the first couple years. And then go from there. On a side note, this is the hard one for me. 2025 also begins the sequence of transition, which will also impact staff responsibilities as we move towards that point. Next page. I know there were some questions about staff and why some job descriptions seem to mirror each other. The important part is we should be cross-trained in just about everything we do. You never know when somebody's not going to be available or out, but there are two very distinct paths that I am recommending that we look at as we go forward in this process. There's the program side, which is our program manager, and right now we have our part-time recreation coordinator, rec specialist. Our CRC manager is online. I understand there's some questions why. In 2023 and 2022, for the 2023 budget, we had requested some positions, and that was the part-time rec person, and we held off on the other position. We held off to be responsible and make best decisions going forward with this process and project. Reallocated that position, same purpose, and moved it into this position. Why do you bring somebody on early? You bring somebody in this type of position on early because there is a lot to do. There is a lot of prep. There's a lot of understanding how things operate, the protocols, the networking, the outreach, building fee schedules, building all the processes that are used that go into a system like this, and we need to be prepared to go. We don't want to be sitting around 3 days before going, what do we do? We want to be prepared and ready to go. I drew this outline for several reasons, so that you could see clearly what the intent is here moving forward. We have the program side, if I may, Dave, and when you look at Public Works, we have the park side and we have the road side. We have the park superintendent, we have the road superintendent. It's not terribly different. We have a program path. That's so we can grow and expand programs. and stay focused and on track. As we go down to the facility side, that's about staying on track with the recreation center, the courts, and any of our other facilities or parks, trying to work towards that rental growth avenue. I think it's really important that we work hard, set our sights correctly, and do the best we can to not overlap what we don't have to, so that we can grow. I know from experience that the more you take on, the more things get clumped together and don't come out as efficiently as you would like. So this is a proactive approach to try to grow both sides of this service provision so that we can be successful. My goal is to be successful in this venture. The area in blue shows the request for staff that you've already seen, and I understand there's been some discussion on that. The areas in gray are not a request, they're not a proposal, they're there as a reference point, speaking to typical park and recreation departments. When things go well and we want to grow and we want to continue to generate that revenue, it does require resources, and this is just a future representation so that there are no surprises, and that is something that would be requested when it's appropriate to be requested, and when we're moving toward that path of revenue growth and expansion with programs and services.
Karen, can I just ask,
Sure.
When you talk about typical parks and recreation resources, what do you categorize as a typical Parks and Rec department in that? Is there any in Bucks County that kind of follow that mold, or is it?
Oh,
more
sure. In
general?
Lower Makefield, Northampton,
Okay.
Middletown. There's up and down Bucks
Okay.
County, actually.
Gotcha.
Quakertown's going in that direction. We cross over to just over the line in Montgomery. You'll have Lansdale, Whitpain. Most of my colleagues, and I've been in this field for a long time, and it's at different stages of staffing. This really is a pretty basic minimal staff accounting. You get into larger departments like Upper Dublin. Upper Dublin's a really good example because they've really grown leaps and bounds. They have a full service staff. They have a pretty large staff, but they do a great job at it. So, and with defined roles. Does that answer your question, Dan?
Yes, thank you.
I think it's important as we start up also that we realize that all of our staff has to be ready to go with whatever needs to be done. If we need to sit at the desk, we'll sit at the desk. It does pull people off from doing what they're being asked to do and what they're being asked to achieve, but I think it's important to note that we are all ready to step up and step in with a focus on success. What are our next steps? Like I said, we've got lots of balls in the air. We're both navigating day-to-day operation as it stands now and actively planning for the future. We will be having some marketing pieces come online, finalizing processes and protocols, preparation of to prepare forms that we'll need to register and use for both programs and rental requests. Get all that into our management system so that we can start taking registrations. You'll see in our winter spring program guide, we're going to start to reach out and actually start. We have started to accept areas of interest. So if somebody's interested, we do have contacts, and we are monitoring that right now, trying to get as much as we can. I can't take people out and walk them into a building and show them what's available at this point, but we are preparing for that to kick off right at the beginning of the year, as the minute we can get in without a hard hat. And one of the things that we're actively engaged in and will be really kicking off soon in our planning is a community open house. This is where we want to open it to the community, but we want to bring in all our instructors, providers, athletic organizations, everybody that we work with in the community, so people can have face-to-face conversations with what we do, what we offer, who's teaching them, get people engaged a little bit in the building, and it runs the gamut. We want to make sure that we accommodate youth through adult. It's really important for people to understand that Parks and Recreation is not limited to youth. It is youth through adult, including seniors. So that's our goal that we're trying to work towards. We don't have a definitive date, as I mentioned. We're hoping, right now, I believe it's around May. And I asked for the board's support. I know it's a tall order to get started, but we have a track record of success, and I think we can move forward with this. This is the startup year. This is where we get our ducks in a row and we get this process rolling. We've made the investment into this project, and I ask that let's also set up and achieve success.
Karen,
Yes, sure.
so for the employees that you're looking to add on to this, are they going to be starting at the beginning of the year, and is a full year is not reflected in this number, is that right?
No,
Okay.
the recreation specialist would move to full-time at the beginning of the year. That would be the plan, so that we can really start to grow that toolbox, get programs ready and in place. There's a lot of time that goes into identifying programs, researching programs, finding instructors, putting it all together. That position is on board now in a part-time capacity, and we'd like to see that move forward. That's an active position. The rec attendants, there's no need for them to come on at the beginning of the year. When you think about the schedule that we have to fill in the building, everything we're not using a rec attendant for, the rec center manager has to take that role on, which is fine to a point, but then that pulls them back from their tasks of growing awareness and participation in the building by way of rentals. Obviously, the program manager and the the CRC manager have to communicate regularly, or else we will just have a scheduling nightmare. So that's a really, really important task that we need to take on and make sure that works. We have our team on board is relatively new, very new. We have a very hardworking team. They're all gelling really, really well, and I think everybody is committed to success and growth of our services.
So for the rec attendants, are they going to be hired at the time of opening, or would it be slightly before for training?
Slightly before. These are all part-time. As it stands now, hours of operation are 80 hours a week. If we were looking at 20 hours a week, that's 60 hours, and we have to juggle around weekends. So we know that not everybody will be working all at the same time, but we do have to fill that schedule. We want to make sure that we do have coverage on outside of normal hours, and also be prepared if we have some groups that come on for potential expanded hours that we're building into the feast. That would be after close, that we have people to man the building.
And one other
We
question.
put the dollars in from May 1st.
Okay, thank you. And one other question, you said that there were some expenses that were going to be spread over 2 years. Were those the balls and the other type of sporting equipment that you were mentioning?
Yep.
Is that, okay, that's all, I just needed to clarify that.
Yep. I mean, it's hard to come to a budget meeting and talk about basketballs and hula hoops, but ball pumps and pickleball nets, all the things that would normally be available if you go to some rec center somewhere that's established. You're going to have equipment and supplies. At this point, there are none. So we have to start to look at that so that we can both we want to implement programs, but we also want to be cognizant, like I said, of the drop-in component, whether it's ping pong or pickleball, whether it's drop-in clubs, instructional. That's the types of things we're looking at, but also, it goes all the way up to bleachers, which are not inexpensive.
Right.
And we are looking to bring them in year 2, so we can get most programs going using chairs initially, since it's an abbreviated year. In total, it's about 35 to 36 We're looking at spreading that out over 2 years at a rate of roughly 21 and 19, 20. So we did take that into consideration. So it's, your decision whether you want to jump in the deep end or wade in the shallow end.
Karen, can I
Sure.
ask? Dan, did you want to say something?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So there's the Park and Rec Director, the CRC Court Manager is sort of the partnership person. Is that fair to say? And then the Program Manager is the scheduler?
Program manager is the person that works to develop programs, the services and things you see in the program guide. So there's the balance between the two sides of service would be the program development and implementation that we offer. And then there's the driving the rentals, whether it's individuals, athletic organizations, partnerships. It's
Yeah. I was just trying to
Meetings,
understand the
all those
difference.
types
I was
of
just
things.
trying to
So-
understand sort of the
Yeah,
difference.
so we're trying to keep it clean and
Gotcha.
best channels for ultimate growth.
Okay, so with that said, is there going to be, I know, I think DAA, or one, I forget who it was, maybe it's the school district, where they had like an automated, where you could go in and you could request available time. Is there going to be any kind of automated system so
Our-
people can request?
Our system that we work with now
How's
does
that, right?
allow reservations.
Okay, I thought so.
I'll be working with them for best entry into the system so that
And-
it's easy to
And
identify.
do we have a business model of what percent has to be, we have to rent, what percent can be drop-in community focus? Like, is there, obviously want to give it all, and then and then how do we manage our fees? Has that been, I know that sort of went round early on, and I don't know if there's been
We're
that
starting to work with the
percentage.
fee structure, and we've done a lot of research. I know a lot of research was done a while back. I know Brenda was involved with that a little bit. Since COVID, things have changed a little bit. I'm also cautious as we go into this. We've been circling around this for 8 years. So we have to bring this in. I want to bring people in and keep them. So,
Like, you may find a lot of rentals at the beginning until our programs get going, and
Right.
there's got to be that fluid,
there has
to be
to
fluid,
and
yeah.
that's why we've worked on the paths that we have so that we can try to kind of double hit everything. We have one gym, which is fine. We appreciate it. We're very, very thankful. And we have the multi-purpose room, which is divisible a little bit. So scheduling is going to be interesting. And hopefully, that's a great problem to have. I hope we have that problem.
Me too.
It will take time. It will take a little bit of time. And this first year, as an abbreviated year, really allows us to get that ball rolling and start that process. Is there a balance at this point? My philosophy is we yield to rentals. They generate more revenue overall, but yet we're also charged with the responsibility of providing services to our community.
Right, so that was my next
So,
question, was the seniors. Are we doing anything specifically
It is a
for
balance.
senior?
We're working through, and we're talking to people right now. We also want to be very cognizant of adaptive recreation. Throughout the summer, I think people got tired of hearing me reach out into the community. Everybody's got talents and skills, and we've actually had some people come forward, and some of them with the adaptive recreation. A couple of years ago, we started a Mahjong program. So we started to do some little things in here because this is the only space we've been using. We started to do a Mahjong program, which started with 4 tables, and we are now sold out at 12.
That's awesome.
So we're trying to do some things that will take over, and some of that is by way of clubs and engagement opportunities, not just straight up come learn how to knit, but bringing people in as friends, and then letting them find other activities along the way. So we're trying to be prepared to take some things with us. We've had some inquiries about chess. I've spoken to some folks I know that teach chess. Spoken to some folks I know that are potentially interested in some tournaments, spoken to some folks I know, pickleball ambassadors, trying to get a kickoff with or early on kickoff with a luck of the draw tournament, so you don't have to worry about what level you are. So we're trying to look at a lot of things like that. Those people are not on board yet, so we're really working with that in-house.
If there were like two top things you needed to get going, is it like the pickleball nets and the bleachers, or well, I'm just making them up? I have no idea. What would they be?
Unfortunately, I know for a lot of people, a lot of the athletic organizations or spectators, bleachers would be high up. They're not high up to me at this point. They would be in year 2. They're something to sit on, but they're not something to engage with.
But it's also, if you have a young child, you may not, is there room?
We can put
in the
chairs
gym
out.
for them to put the chairs out?
We'll put chairs out the first year. But we have to grow a lot of programs. One program or 2 programs isn't going to really move the ball forward. We really need to get in the deep end and make some things happen.
Karen, I have a question. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So first, thank you for a well-thought-out program. It looks like you are building it for success. But I just wanted to ask again about if you're looking to open in May, when are you looking to transition the part-time to full-time?
Full-time would be at the beginning of the year. The part-time to full-time would be beginning of the year. That's program growth and development, and that's something that we have to stay on top of and move quickly on as best we can. It takes time to do that. The part-time would be shortly before we open, enough time to go through the process of interviewing and making sure we are bringing the right people in, and then starting them up pretty close to the opening.
Okay.
There's a lot of time to cover.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And do you have things for the teens? I mean, teens are an unusual group. You don't know whether they're going to show up or not, right? But if you are able to attract them to hang out, right, is there going to be like I know they have it at the Y too. Are we doing anything or working with the Y at all? I guess I'm asking.
Not at this point.
Okay, do we have identified partners at all, or are we still in conversations?
We're in a lot of conversations. I can tell you CBAA is ready to write the check.
Great,
They call me regularly.
great.
And that's basketball. And their season of interest is December through March. So that's a start. Of course, volleyball's during the same season, and there's a lot of overlap. So you maybe 4 days a week, it may be 3 days a week, it may be
Yeah.
3 groups, 1 day a week. I would like to hold at least 1 day, probably something like a Friday for drop-in for families, for teens, for kids to engage in their space.
Are there any other questions for Karen?
Yes, as I said, one of our commitments in Park and Recreation, this isn't Doylestown Township, this is the Park and Recreation profession, is all ages. So we are very committed to doing it. And you're right, teens are a challenging group.
You don't know what's going to stick.
You can
right.
sit down with them and they tell you what they want, but when you put it all together, it's not what they want. They change their minds. That's okay. And it's a great, while we have the rec attendance, and I know it's an expense, but I'd like to suggest that this is where people used to start first jobs. And there are very few first jobs around anymore. It's the type of job that we would love to have the young seniors and retirees that are committed. So I think in and of itself, while an expense, it's also an opportunity.
Is there any relationship or conversations with Del Val University?
Not at this point.
Okay.
Not at this point.
We have a contact with them, though, that works with the students. We work with, Barbara and I work with him on DART, and we do have a contact with someone at Del Val that works with all the students and everything, and Barbara and I work closely with him on DART, and we've mentioned the building, so he's like, when you guys are ready, let me know. So,
And
but we haven't gone.
as Karen had said, they're working on building all that, putting that all together now. So that's probably going to happen after you build the,
Christian was just out there at the wellness fair over at the hospital, taking information over. So we're starting to look for places to go and people to talk to try to grow those relationships. Remember, we've lost touch with a lot of people over this process. But we had a huge response at the concerts this summer. We saw a lot of people and had a lot of dialogue. So
I was
think
going to say at the concert series,
It's,
there were people that came up to us that said they have programs that they want to provide, or they have programs that they're really interested in. It was very exciting. And if only a small portion of them came to me to say that, I know Karen probably fielded a bazillion, and Barbara probably as well, a bazillion of them, so.
Well, one of the things that intrigued me with Courtney's interview, our program manager, is her commitment to, you may run into Courtney and she may be asking you, what are your interests? What are your likes? What would you like to teach? So she's a go-getter. So, and I think we all have something to offer inside us.
If I could, I just have one question. I believe we added in for this year's budget, one person for Park and Rec. Didn't we? Wasn't there one?
For, you referring to maintenance? Because we did. We had
Okay,
somebody.
and
Yeah.
that position has been filled for the entire year and will be carried forward.
Well, I don't know when they start. They started, Dave, like a little
We'll be
later.
addressing that momentarily.
Charlie.
I'm sorry to
That's
jump
okay.
ahead. I
all right.
didn't know. And also, just a comment, I was very happy to hear you talk about adaptive activities and adaptive recreation.
Thank you. We ran into this summer a gentleman that runs a music program. It's phenomenal. It's the folks, if anybody's been to the concerts, we have a large contingent of folks that come to the concerts, and they've embraced the community. They're part of the community. I'd love to see the potential to bring that music program into our facility as well.
Is that microphone working?
Test.
Yeah, there you go.
Hi. What part of the plan that you have in place, or the people that you are looking to hire, have social media experience, or what's the direction of that? Because I don't know if Park and Rec has and you can tell me if I'm wrong, if they've got an Instagram page or whatever that is run independently, because it seems like a lot of what you're saying is potentially something that's where that marketing effort should be placed to try to get the community back engaged. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I'm just looking at it here. It could be.
So in the township, we have one social media system. It all goes through a central hub, including Park and Recreation. It's very efficiently operated, and we get information out regularly. But yes, in marketing, it is the outreach. It is getting those pieces, the components together that show what's available, the size, the shape, what types of things. Our architect is working with us to build those pieces, the floor plans with the tables and chairs, so that we have all that. The great news is they were not part of the golf outing this year for whatever reason, and will be doing this gratis for us, a little bit of recognition at the golf outing, so I'm really excited about that.
So will there be will someone put a financial plan just to make sure, like, I love all the community outreach, I love the drop-in, but there has to be a financial piece.
It has-
We have a lot of debt
Yes.
with this, and then we're taking on a lot of expense.
Yes, it'll grow.
So that financial plan, we need to see, because we're talking very broad lens about all these wonderful feel-good things, but there is a dollars and cents that has
Oh, there
to
are.
drive this.
Every program
So I
has
want
to,
to, I guess I want to know if we'll see that as a board, or see some kind of a program. I know a
I think a
long
lot
time
of
ago
that's
we
going
talked
to, a
about
lot
it.
of that's going to grow out of the first year. I mean, we have a long history of providing these services. This is what we're really doing at a much larger scale, is adding on these amenities, and that changes the focus of our entire Park and Recreation Department. That'll be the central hub, and that, in working with the finance department, will grow. Our staff now is required to, every program and event, have a budgetary piece, so that, one, they learn how to budget, and that we don't just run a program, but they're accountable for
Right.
what the programs cost, including
Right.
the staff and the supplies, and all that will start to come
Right, like
together.
if you don't get a certain minimum number of people, right, because there's a
Correct.
staff cost. there's a
We don't
electrical
run our
cost.
programs at a loss. One of the things that's really important to us is we work a lot now with the third-party program providers. It's a 70-30, and that's standard across Park and Recreation. profession.
Is it going to
and
stay 70/30?
It's going to stay there right now. I know it's easy, it's all of us, and I have said it, and I'm sure people at this table from me said it, well, it changed to 60/40. The problem with that is that these are third-party businesses. They come in and we're going to make this much. As soon as we change the percentage, they change the rate, we become unaffordable. So it's important right now that we get people in the door and grow our relationships, and part of that is the internal run programs, whether it's by members of the community that are willing to offer a program, but then we start to step off of that 70/30 and start to look at, okay, what are you charging us? So you're going to charge us $20 and the equipment costs $10. It turns around, we call them 1099, and we can turn that around a little bit to reflect a better percentage.
Right, and that's the,
Not the third party.
right, but that's also looking at the larger lens of the cost, if it makes sense. I understand the 70/30, I understand why you want to do the split, but there is still a responsibility to make sure that we're.
There's
in the
always a
ballpark.
responsibility. We don't, yeah,
Right.
we don't
want
run
to be at a major loss more than we are. Yeah.
No, we don't. We have to step into the pool and get and start swimming.
Are there any other questions? Is there anything that is needed from the board at this time regarding Park and Rec?
to do anything?
Not at this time?
Yeah, as I had indicated previously, this is how we want to build the budget, especially on the personnel side, which will be confirmed with pencils down on the 15th.
Okay.
Is there a way to slow the staffing down on the part-time people until you see what your programs look like? I mean, can you step them in instead of hiring 3 part-time people immediately?
We can. It'll adjust the hours of operation. Somebody's going to have to be in the building.
Understood.
So then we would be closed. We will close during those times.
All right. And, okay, thank you, Karen. I appreciate it. And Dave Tomko, I think you're next.
Okay. Yes, sir. Take the chart. We have a handout. I'm going to talk about just Public Works operations. Public Works capital we'll touch on as Anne-Marie goes through the agenda and we start talking about capital projects. So I just want to touch quickly on this and Brenda, to your question and regarding staffing. In 23, we had a vacancy. Someone left the Public Works Department, and we didn't fill that role in the road department until probably mid-24 of this year, as well as we were approved for 2 new employees in Public Works in the Parks Department and in the facilities. So in 24, we really brought on 2 new employees in Public Works for half the year, and then filled a vacancy that was almost 9 months empty in the road department. So ultimately, we are now 9 in the Public Works. You see the salaries and wages there at $119,000 is partial year, right?
Millions.
Oh, $1 million. Oh, $1 million, okay, $1 million. There we go. Okay, corrected. So, and then obviously the estimate for 25, which includes those 2 new employees, plus that person that filled that vacancy for 2025 full-time. We have no requests for any new Public Works employees, though I put in requests for admin assistant, which was approved as a part-time employee. So that's where that's the part-time staff, and then you can see the increase, the difference in the wages there, $158,000. So that's our wages. Admin, basically, that also includes overtime. Okay, so we're seeing regular straight time plus any estimations on overtime. So for that $158,000 on that differential there from between 24 and 25. Okay. Engineering, overall, these are our engineering numbers at $335,000. going to 450 for into 2024 with the differential of 114,000. What we're trying to do is we're trying to move, well, I'll go back and say what we're trying to do track is when we have capital projects. I'm not talking about, just general, quote unquote, we call it general engineering, where maybe we have an applicant come in and they're talking to us about something occurring. We're talking about if we have a capital project, whether it be the road program or it be the community recreation center or something else, another amenity we're working on in the park maybe that's identified as a capital project. We're trying to track that engineering money with that project all along. So what we're trying to do is identify based on the project, and more specifically, we're looking at roads and bridges, basically infrastructure, roads and bridges, the parks, bike hike trails. We're starting to move some of that engineering money out of Fund 1 and basically pay for it out of Fund 53, which is supported by millage. Okay? So that's where we have, with the engineering, there's some changes in the line items. So you'll see, if you saw the detailed here, you'd see, the detailed budget, you'd see that Fund 1 would have a decrease, but 53 would have an increase. Okay? So just to know that we're starting to move this around, and because it helps us out on the millage side with that, takes some pressure off of Fund 1.
Just
Okay.
to make sure, I'm simplifying it for a simple brain. It's not actually, so you're saying that's not actually an increase in the overall budget just for this specific budget because we're just moving money around?
No. Maybe you can reword that, Dan. I'm trying to track
I'm
your...
trying- It's not, if we were to look at the entire township budget, that specific increase isn't increasing the total budget, it's just changing your department's budget.
We are increasing the engineering budget for 25.
Okay.
Okay. But at the same time, we're moving money, fees that we'd be paying out of Fund 1, and we're paying them out of 53.
Okay.
That are project related to 53. We're not taking, something that can't be associated with roads and bridges, let's say, and pay for that out of roads and bridges. Okay, it's all tied to that infrastructure projects, and a lot of the engineering, besides again the general stuff, is coming out of can come out of 53. So that's why we're seeing same thing as when we look at capital projects. A little bit, if I could, just pivot that out a little bit. That's where we're also parking some of the projects like the bike and hike trail maintenance, some of the obviously the culvert repairs and the road paving program. Those kind of things. So that is coming out of 53 because there's money there. Also, we can offset 53 on the road side because of the state liquid fuel funds we have out of 35. So because 53 and 35 are healthier, if I can use that term, and I'm looking at my coworkers in the finance department for their nod. But yeah, that's really kind of, what we're trying to do there. Okay.
Basically, your professional fees are following the project. So we have projects in 53, so those professional fees are going to go along with the project. So that's basically it. The fees are following the project.
Correct.
I get, maybe it's philosophical. So last year, it was recommended we move the trails with the roads program.
Into Fund 53.
Right, which is
Yes.
Fund 53.
Correct.
And with the trails, a lot of times we're getting, the Bike and Hike Committee is very prolific, and they're applying for these grants. And we're getting them, but there is an expense tied to them with whether it's engineering or some kind of design or some kind of match, and it's a variety of things. But
I think you're mixing metaphors here, and let's not get kind of lost in that, is that when I'm talking about what's coming out of 53 and project related is current maintenance and repairs of infrastructure, not
It's only
the bike and
infrastructure.
hike, not the new bike and
Okay,
hike
so it's only
stuff that's-
infrastructure, okay.
which is supported by the grants and the new construction. This is maintenance, maintaining of existing, and rehabilitation of existing is coming out of 53.
got
Okay?
it. Okay, I'll wait for my question then.
I
Okay.
think those are coming out of different things, and we can talk about
Gotcha.
those later. Okay? All right. So when no further questions there, moving on. By parks, maintenance is a slight increase at $15,000, 15,000 at 350,000, 15,000. We've kind of held that line item on parks maintenance at 300,000, and we've fluctuated around there. It's pretty good. So, but we want to move it, obviously, with things occurring, that's going to move forward there. Just some other big items that we have is the snow and ice, basically supplies and contracted services. There's an increase there. That's always a guess, just because we don't know what the winter's going to bring. I mean, we could have a great winter and we don't spend any of that. We could have a terrible winter and it blows up. So really just a guess there, but just want to, show you that there's an increase. Because of contracted services, they're always going up every year. So we move that line item. And then just the general expenses, 100,000, I jumped myself. The other expenses are, 10,000 generally in other capital or operation costs on other items. So that's where we're at. What's 400,000? 400,000 is other. Yeah, it's like the catch-all. Well, it's and I'll for every, and I'm just looking at everything from, we're talking equipment, small or contracted services for trees, traffic signal signs. I mean, it's really the catch-all of everything else. The reason why we didn't,
Training.
train.
Small, yes.
Yeah, I mean, on it. You're not on the microphone, so you need to.
There's an increase in wages from 2024 to 2025. Is that a percentage of increase that's calculated?
Yes, per what the board discussed in the executive session.
Okay.
And it touches on the part-time and the employees that will be here a full year.
Right. What is that percentage that was calculated? We're not talking about that right now. Never mind. 3.5.
3.5%.
But also, that includes overtime, right?
That also includes
that
overtime,
the
which is.
And the new person.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's generally it for operations. Again, we'll talk capital as we move forward here. Is there any questions on operations?
Engineering.
On the list, what?
Engineering, traffic. That kind of answers
I
the
mean,
question.
engineering, yeah, engineering
That's part of the
move forward,
increase.
but I mean, generally, again, we increase our engineering line item on that, but that's where we're at there.
Dave, is the trail inspections then fixing current trails as well? And are we, in some of the, I think in one of the write-ups, you said some of them are narrow. Are we now going to be widening certain trails? Because it says, I think, if I'm referencing in here, it said some don't meet the current widths. Are you going to be widening trails?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, generally, when we rehabilitate trails, they are being basically replaced in kind as far as widths. We're not widening.
We're not doing any?
No, we're not doing any
Okay,
widening.
that's
I
all
think maybe the only widening we would be doing is in Turk Park. Basically the unpaved trail in Turk Park is really narrow and is undefined. So I think that might be the only one would be widened out bigger, but not anything else within the bike hike trail system.
Does that fall on us or on the county with their project coming in for that?
So there, again, that's a capital project. The county's doing their project, which comes down parallel along Alms House Road, loops around, but it doesn't include the entire.
Okay, they don't intend to do any of the existing.
Right, so we're going to kind of finish that off whenever that occurs, so we're programming something in there for that. Okay? Any other questions on operations? Okay,
All right, thank you, Dave.
we'll talk about capital in a bit.
Well done. Thank you, Dave.
All right, 2025 capital plan.
All right, that's me. All right. So for the last budget work session, we went over some capital where we discussed adding park improvements to the 2024 borrowing, which the board did accept 2 of the projects that were proposed. So this meeting is to focus on the capital requests that came forward for 2025. So we've been discussing for a few meetings now about the unfunded capital and the possibility for borrowing for capital starting in 2025. Last week, I received all of the capital requests for 2025 for a total capital that equaled $9.3 million with an unfunded amount of $3.4 million. The good news is, on our 2024 forecast, our revenue is projected for a surplus about $1.3 million approximately. So to avoid borrowing for capital, the Finance Department recommends to use this surplus to fund capital. I want to take an opportunity to inform the board of the process that we took to lower this capital spending to fit within this surplus. Yes. So last week, the Finance Department met with management and the department heads to review and discuss these capital requests. Through this discussion, we marked the capital that was necessary for 2025, whether that be committed by grants, signed contracts, or a project that has already started. We are able to agree on a plan, and we're able to create a capital plan for a 7.1 capital spending plan with an unfunded amount of $1.1 million, which you will see on the bottom sheet of the summary page. So the capital spending would be the 7.1 with an unfunded of rounding up to 1.1. Additionally, we reserved 3 capital projects that could be accomplished should there be any additional surplus, which at that point a budget amendment would come forward to the board at that time. These projects include to finish the Public Works fit out, the lower and admin parking lot pavement, and the facilities vehicle. I want to note there is a need to fund projects where we have to float the money where we get the reimbursement later. And that is why we left that 200,000 buffer. I said we're approximating a 1.3 surplus. We did an unfunded of 1.1 to keep that float. We'll work closely with management to ensure we stay within this 1.1 million spending. And I also just want to note that this funded capital includes the roads, bridges, trail maintenance that is done by millage. You have the 2024 borrowing that is funding the rest of the CRC and the 2 projects we discussed. And some of the basin filtration is going to be done by ARPA. So we are spending the 7.1 in capital, but the 1.1 is the unfunded that we need to discuss. Okay, so just making sure I touched it. So we can talk about the summary if the board would like to go one by capital, but if not, I'm open to questions about certain pieces. What you'll see is in the summary and what's in your book is what we're proposing for 2025 only. I can send the rest of the capital requests that we were able to move out into the outer years, but your book contains the capital projects we're asking for 2025.
I have a question. You're talking about specifically the different projects, including the vehicles, is that correct?
Sorry, it cut out, I missed the...
She's asking about the summary that includes vehicles as well?
The summary?
The EVs.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
The summary.
The vehicles, right. There's requests for vehicles in your capital project?
We did, yes. So there's the police vehicles.
If that's something, yeah, I didn't know if that was something you were going to take questions on now.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I got the information, and you were kind enough, you had the intern help with looking over the different options for the different vehicles. And I found that on the EV vehicles that were being priced, that each of them contained a cost of $30,000 for a charging station, and then another $20,000 for infrastructure. Now, that would be the cost to do a fast charge unit, but probably for most of the work, most of the vehicles that might be used for township employees, that kind of level of charging wouldn't be necessary. In fact, I myself use a level 2 charger, and I installed that for $1,000, less than $1,000. So I just wanted to be sure, unless I'm missing something, I wasn't sure if that $50,000 looked like it was being taken into the cost of the comparisons. It's not like you need one charger for each electric vehicle. You would probably only need one charger, especially a level 2, that could cost $1,000 for several vehicles.
Correct, we
So I
used,
didn't know if I'm misunderstanding something there.
no, that was just the information that our intern was able to find. So in the police vehicle one, I would assume you'd want a fast charger. If we were trying to discuss the police side, and we didn't really
Yeah,
have.
but I was specifically wanted to start with the administration, I guess the administration.
I mean, with our intern, we might not have any guidance on the EV transition, so we just went with what the police would have. And for infrastructure, that is a rough number without any type of study done. I don't know where the electrical is. I know we spoke with Dave and Rick, and without any further, we use the 20,000. So we can definitely take that into consideration, but the unknown of infrastructure is still there, and if there is where we can get a charger for $1,000, that'd be even better.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help with that, because there are different level chargers and it is confusing, and there may be a need if the police were to use, go to EVs for that fast charger, but for most EV cars, most of us just use the level 2. Like I said, that's basically 240 electric. It's like you plug in your dryer. It's that same power of electric. It takes, a few hours to charge, but potentially someone could go out into the field, do an inspection or do whatever duty they needed to do, and then come back and charge, put their vehicle back in the charge. Vehicles for $1,000, an employee could potentially, if someone took a vehicle home, could potentially have their vehicle being charged at home. So that, one vehicle isn't tying up everything. So I just wanted to make sure that when we take a look and we ask for vehicles, that the costs we're getting the right numbers in terms of those comparisons.
And I guess that's where we can talk to the board now. If your vision is to start this EV process in 2025, we can take the 30,000 out for the charging, but the numbers that are in our current is for an ICE vehicle, for the combustion engine vehicle. But if the board would like to move to EVs, I would just have to move some numbers, and we'd have to discuss cutting another capital project potentially to afford the EV. Because I just want to point out, on the screen I have up, and this I believe was sent to you guys, it's just not in this capital book, but the Ford Escape that they're asking for is $29,000, with the comparison of a Chevy Blazer at $57,000 and a Mach-E at $43,000. We'd have to
Plus
discuss.
the grants that can come off, right? So there's also grants that are available.
There is grants, and that's another unknown I think I would need guidance on, because if we are going to, piece of the grant, say the police say you do want to do the EV from the police department, they're going to be locked in there where they park. The grants are no longer applicable because it has to be for public charging only.
So as far as the EV for the police department is concerned, it's not only the environmental concerns with them, which are obviously something that this board is dedicated to, but there also are safety concerns with EV cars that, I'm personally not comfortable with an EV for the police department currently. But I would be happy to have 2 hybrids, because I think the hybrids, Lieutenant, I don't know if you want to speak on this, but I think the hybrids satisfy your concerns for safety of your officers.
That is correct. This year with our budget, and we put in for the 2 police vehicles, I am open to the hybrids for both vehicles. The only reason that I chose to go with the standard combustion engine vehicle for the Ford Escape was just due to cost. Those vehicles typically only drive about 4,500 miles a year. There's an $8,000 price difference between the combustion engine vehicle and the hybrid. So the gas savings that we would have with the hybrid would never amount to the $8,000 difference that we would be putting out. We'd never see a return.
Can I ask a question? With those hybrids, I know we sell our cars. What is the difference if you sell the, I'm sorry, I don't remember the reporting.
It's the hybrids, as far as everything that I have seen in speaking
resale?
with Dan, they're about the same. When we're done with police cars, when we're done with them, there's not much left to them. They just go to auction. So it's whatever the auction sales is going at that point in time for that type of car.
So for a hybrid resale, you think it's going to be roughly the same as?
I would believe so, because it still has an engine inside it.
For an EV, do we know, but?
That I don't know.
For an EV, what that would look like? Because I think that would be important to know.
I spoke with our fleet manager. There's none on the resale at this time because they're still relatively new. So we don't know the lifeline of EVs and we don't know the resale at this time.
And I'd also say the other vehicle that could be considered would be the admin shared use vehicle. That's really the only one that you might want to introduce as possibly an EV or a hybrid. You know, it's
Right.
used
Yeah,
for.
that's really what I saw as the focus too, Stephanie. I thought that
Yeah.
that would be, police vehicle, I understand the concerns,
Well,
but, you know, in terms of administrative, that might be. I just want to make sure that the costs were truly captured correctly.
So if we're looking to, say, replace all of these with hybrid vehicles that we're discussing right now, the police vehicles and also the admin one that we're discussing, we would need to know what the price difference is, the cost difference, and what we would need to adjust for.
Yeah, so it's up. Oh,
thank you.
It's not very clear there. So the difference is about $10,000. So here's the $29,000 that we're asking for the Ford Escape, which is the eco-friendly one, and then the Ford Escape Hybrid is $38,000. And these numbers came straight off from CoStars with the help of Dan Markloff.
Okay.
So about $10,000 more. And what we found working with Dan and the intern was it's the same point that Lieutenant Ziegler just made point of, was that they drive less than 5,000 miles a year, that the returns might not be there. It's used for training, it's used to go to the bank, if anyone needs to take it to another meeting. So they're not being driven much.
In which case, they would probably be using electric for most of those short-term driving, depending on how much. I mean, you can get a hybrid that goes 20 miles on electric, or you can get a hybrid that goes 50 miles on electric. So it depends on what you're buying. So, but for local driving, you could probably be on electric the whole time, which is a huge savings.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, we're also looking at not only the cost savings, which is obviously what we're here for to discuss, but also the fact that we've made a commitment to moving forward in environmental causes and making sure we're doing the right thing for the future of the township and the people in it. So, I mean, I'm personally comfortable with the hybrid option for the 2 police cars and the admin as well. Judy, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I'd like to see the true numbers reevaluated for the electric vehicle for the admin, because I think it would be really a good thing for the.
You would just subtract the 30,000.
You would deduct the 20 and the 30, right?
Well, you would.
1,000.
Well, we don't know what the infrastructure is going to be and how much it's going to cost, where our electric boxes are and what you'd have to dig up to run the infrastructure. I think they were I think Dave felt pretty comfortable with 20,000. We looked at what the charger in 2021 was, right, Dave? And
Yeah, that was a significant amount of money.
$28,000, I believe.
$2,000 offset
Yeah.
as well.
Because the one we put out, we do have a charger in the township property. And we put that in, I guess, in '21. And we did get some grant money for that, but it was, you guys probably have the numbers better than I do. It was over 15,000, I believe. Is that correct? So if we're going to have a charger like that, and I know there are potentials for just a plug, but you know, we would want to have the appropriate charger going forward.
There are potentials for just a plug. If you have one admin, a hybrid or full electric, you can have 220 line. You can charge it that way. You don't need a separate apparatus for it.
Yeah, I just, you know, for me, it's hard to understand how those numbers can come in so high when I can charge, you know, I can install a charger for $500 and buy it off the shelf and have my electrician run a 240 line from my electric box for $400. I'm having a hard time understanding how it's coming up to $15,000 that we would need to pay for something that we could put right next to, like a maintenance building or somewhere.
I think it's a few points here is that, number one, where's the location? If it's going to be a public charging station where we're going to allow public to use it, we're not going to be able to tuck it in the back of the building. Number two, are we going to have grant money that will allow us, and therefore it needs to have public access? Or do we park it right next to the building, and Judy, as you said, and just run a line out from the building? We can look at those options. I think with the evaluation, we went to kind of worst case and looked at that just because we don't want to say, well, it's going to be $500, and instead it turns around to being $50. So I think that if we have direction, as Anne Marie said, on where the board wants to head, then we can start looking at the options and what the actual costs are. And, we would do that moving forward.
I'm just confused. So if you go for a grant, the charging station has to be accessible to the public, is that correct? Does that work with the needs of the police who need to be able to have their car charged at all times? Because you don't want to pull up and it's full because someone's sitting there. I mean, I'm a little confused. I'm just looking for clarification.
They would have to have their own.
You have to have your own.
Yeah.
So that's just a separate thing.
But if Judy's right, and the hybrid vehicles, as Barbara and Judy, I know other board members in some of our EAC have those hybrids, if we can utilize a 220 line, which is, a dryer plug, I guess, something similar, then we may be able to use a current electric line and just swap out an existing plug that's in the garage.
I'll interject again real quick so everybody understands.
We're not the engineers.
We have the carport where all the police vehicles are parked, whether, in use or not during the day. The electric service is right behind there. We can outfit that carport with as many chargers as we want, levels as needed to supply the police department. Again, we'd have to look at the cost, and we can do that if we know we have direction and with Rick and with the lieutenant.
We've already agreed that the
Yeah.
chief is going to have 2 hybrids,
Okay.
right? That's what he would like.
And the hybrids, I don't believe they're plug-in hybrids. I think they're self-charging hybrids. So the electrical issue would not be an issue for the police department with both of these
That's
vehicles.
what I was trying to understand. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
That's all I
you.
wanted to know.
Okay, yeah.
That's all I care about.
That's what Ford makes.
So the self-charging ones kind of change things for me because I don't necessarily, I don't know a lot about them, but I'm not fully confident that they're going to do what we want them to do as far as being as environmental as we want them to be. So it may be a step forward, but it's less of a step forward than a plug-in hybrid. I think.
I don't know.
You don't know?
No, I
Do
don't.
you have,
plug-in.
you have a plug-in? I have a plug-in as well. So I don't know.
I'm confused, Jen. Can you explain?
So I think with the hybrid that they're looking at for the police department, and I'm sure somebody else knows better than me, is one of those self-charging ones that the movement of the
Yes, I
car.
understand.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good option for the police as well.
Okay. So we're comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, that's easy without having to have a plug.
So the police one, so the admin one.
Well, I think we talked about it being a hybrid.
Going to the hybrid
Yes,
of
but if-
the Ford Escape hybrid.
But I also think Judy would be comfortable to know what the cost of that would be with an actual charger. I think it's the same thing. You have a 220 line.
Okay. So for the
So we can cost that out. We'll get the cost with the
two vehicles.
Because
Okay.
most of the chargers, like the units you see, tie in with like a credit card for public charging.
Correct.
And so that's what we have in the park. And I know there's other ones but we can look into what the cost of just a 220 line, if that's what, we'll talk to Dan and Dan Markloff, our fleet manager, and we'll see what the difference between those types of vehicles would be.
I think it's going to be crucial for our plans to get this out of the way now, because if we don't know what we're going to do for charging infrastructure, it handicaps us on everything we're going to do. We're going to have this discussion every year when we talk about an electric vehicle. So I think this is one of the things for 2025, even if it's just a concept, but just if we have to start budgeting money for either 2025 or 2026 to put in a charging area so we can start moving forward on some of these plans.
Right. We
What
can
is
do
that? Is that engineering, playing?
And we can talk to other municipalities to see what they're doing. I know your question was directed on if we knew anyone else around here, and,
Yeah.
you know, we got some information from Warrington, but not a
Middletown's just done it, Middletown Township's just
Yeah. I
done
would
a
love,
big
like,
program.
maybe just an email to us with a little
Down there.
summary of what they're doing and how they, so we're not debating it here.
Yeah, and
Great.
I
Thank you.
think it's new for every township, so we're kind of learning off of each other.
Exactly.
I will say from Middletown, I spoke with their chairman down there, and she indicated they put in several level 3 chargers, which are the expensive ones. They did so with the help of several grants, including grants from PICO
Yes.
and such. So I don't know what the level of public access is on those. I'd have to ask.
And
But
PICO does half of the infrastructure, so since we use the 20,000 for infrastructure, that's where we got the 10,000. So if it's less, PICO does half of the infrastructure.
yeah, and again, we don't need the level 3 chargers except for future police vehicles. I think that's an unnecessary expenditure for us at this point for public use.
So if I understand, I just want to make sure we get the plan. The police will move both to hybrids, because his original plan was one hybrid and then the Ford Escape, so we'll move them both to hybrids. And for the admin vehicle, we'll move to the hybrid for this year, and we'll start building that plan. We can work with EAC to build a plan for budgets of 2026, potentially for
And
a charging
I'm
port.
sorry, I'm just going to ask one more time. So the hybrid, when it comes in, I know it has to be equipped for police. And did that number, and I know you said there
It
was,
should be in the CapEx form.
yeah.
They
I
are.
just, yeah.
I would also like to ask that when we are looking at future vehicles, that when the board receives the requests for any future vehicles, that we see like what an ICE versus a hybrid versus an electric is, so that we can kind of make that decision at that point.
And I will,
I'd still like to say, I think we should get the EV for the admin. I think it would be an easy fit. I think it'd be easy to charge, and I think the township would save money with it. And it would be a good test going forward with more vehicles in future years.
How long will we keep the admin vehicle?
25 years? Seriously.
It's a
We have a
10,000
vehicle
one.
right now, that is 21 years old. Okay.
I don't have a problem either with having it as an electric.
We don't do a lot, I mean.
It doesn't have
yeah,
to be a
we
hybrid.
keep them a long time.
As long as we can charge it. And I know the cost is going to be different, so I don't,
so these are your two EV options if we want to discuss not getting a hybrid for the admin vehicle and an EV. So we have to go what's off of CoStarz.
Okay.
So you get the Chevy Blazer or the Mach-E EV. So you're talking now from a 29 for a combustion engine to 39 for the hybrid, and now you're at 43 for the Mach-E and a 57 for a Chevy Blazer. It's a Mustang. It's a
Mustang.
two-door Mustang.
Really nice.
Yeah, they're really, my
Yeah.
sister-in-law has one.
So
brother-in-law
I
does.
think
Go with that one.
Yeah.
a lot of municipalities, I've seen Mach-E's being used in police departments.
And that's what Warrington has with
Yeah.
their detectives.
Yeah,
But they're kind of small. Is that the one that's
they're
small?
small.
They're
They're
small.
small for,
They're tight in the back.
and, well, they're also kind of small for
It's a two-door.
sometime when officers are very
Well, we're
tall.
not, this is just for the admin.
Admin, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
So on a financial side, this is kind of where we need,
29
for 25 for this admin vehicle, that I need direction from the board if we want to start a hybrid, or if we do want to do EVs, these are our two options at the moment, or the Ford Lightning, but I don't,
I like the 29, this
For the
one.
police, it's too small, but
for admin.
It's going to, it
just
sits
for
most of the time, and it's sitting most of the time, correct?
Correct, they're doing less than 5,000 miles a year, because
Yeah.
it's going to training, sitting at an airport if one of us is flying to training, going to the bank twice a week.
Well, okay, so the Mach-E, it shows it as almost $43,000 for the vehicle itself. The charging station we are going to look at, right? Because that's not, I don't,
Yes.
I don't know as if that's, yeah, I think that looks a little high.
Well, again, that was
The nice thing also with electrics is that there's a lot less maintenance because there's no moving engine bits.
Well, again, I think Dan vetted this as far as, I mean, the maintenance costs they went through Dan, correct? Or
They did.
Yeah, it's like, it's
So,
like half of what
yeah,
the ice
Yes, I think
ones
it was a
were,
half.
yeah.
yeah.
So the difference between the hybrid and the Chevy Blazer or the Mach-E, I think that's probably going to be too small, but I don't have to drive it. So it's what, $30,000 difference? Is that what we're talking about? Forget about the charging
For a
station.
combustion engine, yes, the hybrid is 38, so 20,000
And the all-electric is how much more?
would be the 20,000 more. The Blazer would be 57.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
Is that with the grants that we can get for the vehicles?
We included those 3 grants. I'd have to double check if they were all for charging. I know PICO was for the infrastructure, and I'd have to go check the other 2.
That's a lot of money for a vehicle, but, you know, it does a lot of things, too.
I'm not for spending the money. I don't think we're going to get the bang for the buck. I'd rather support the police, do that, let this sit, and then we'll see where the market moves with the EVs and moving forward. You can always trade it in, the one you buy for something else. It's another time than investing for a vehicle to sit.
Can I see the ICE version of this as well? Okay.
These 2.
Okay, so it's 38, and that's with cost of fuel for the year?
That's for a Chevy Traverse.
Okay,
And then here's for the Ford Escape.
Yep.
okay.
And the Ford Escape is an eco-friendly vehicle.
Is that what you have?
Yeah, that's what I have.
And DTMA.
GTMA has one as well.
Yeah.
I had to make this choice with my own vehicle, and I tended to go kind of in the middle and get the hybrid. So I'm actually supportive of the hybrid option for this vehicle simply because it is less expensive than an electric, and it's not going to be doing much. It doesn't do a lot of miles, so
You will run on electric.
I run on electric almost exclusively unless I'm out, out of town. Yeah, unless I'm out of town, and mine only charges to about 40 miles. So when I'm working here in Doylestown, that's all I am. So I think this will act as an electric vehicle for all intents and purposes with the option. I think it gives us a good ease into it.
Yeah. And I agree with you, Jen. I think we want to ease into it. We want to start to, see where all of this goes and be prepared for the future.
And as far as electric vehicles go, I mean, that obviously we want to start moving more towards full electric, but this will give us a chance to assess our infrastructure needs and start planning for that a little bit, I think.
Can we go back to this? Are we done with the cars?
Did we make a decision?
Yeah, we're going
I think we have
hybrid.
Consensus?
Yeah, we just need consensus.
So I'm a no to the hybrid. I'm totally about the 29,000 Ford Escape. Just,
police vehicles,
no, I'm okay with a hybrid for the police vehicles, just not.
Yeah.
For the car that's going to sit most of the time, I think we should just be really economical and just let it, and we can always trade it in later or do something and just wait. I'd rather have the 10,000 for something else. That's my opinion.
Is there a chance just to look at this one more time in terms of the vehicle and the grants that it would reduce the cost to? Is there time to do that?
Well, is there a grant that would reduce the cost of the vehicle?
I'd have
doubt
to look
not.
at those 2. I don't know if they're going to reduce.
Yeah, I think there are grants out there. I would just like to double check that before we completely shut that out at this point.
Do you know where they are, Judy?
What does finance think?
I definitely can find resources where they would be. Yes.
Sorry, I lost the train of thought. We're talking about a grant for a hybrid or for the EVs?
EV.
EVs, yeah,
Okay.
the EVs.
I was just thinking one thing that's not,
I just asked
Look
for
at
a
this.
little more
We have
time
all
for
this.
that.
Well, I think we can move on with a hybrid at this point, and then if we get more information that makes it available, that makes it so that we can buy electric vehicle, we have some time to
Yeah.
work that into the budget.
I think for now, we can just make that assumption that we're going to go with the 3 hybrids, if that's the consensus of the board, with additional information coming for electrics to change later. So we do have time, Judy. We have time to change it. So why don't we do that? Let them have those figures to figure out the budget, and then if we can squeeze another, if it makes sense, and we can get the money, then we could do that. Sound good?
Thank you, Barb.
Dan, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
good.
I was going to point out, I'm not sure how this applies for government vehicles, but I believe for hybrids, there's also a tax rebate on those. I'm not sure if we can qualify for those as well. No?
I don't think so, but I can,
We'll probably be exempt.
So if we're moving on, everybody happy with this right now? Okay. All right. I did have a question. We are looking at it's 23-22, resurface the CP Loop Road. We have that listed in 2025. I might be conflating this with something else. Was there a discussion about potential grants for that?
that loop road went into the 2024 borrowing. So,
Okay.
is that in that's in maintenance, correct?
It's in maintenance, yeah.
Yeah, so you'll see the 415.5 at 2322, and then you'll see the negative under the 2024 Parks Improvements Bond for the 415.5.
Okay.
It's a have to then.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
But that doesn't go in, that's not part of the unfunded number that you're seeing.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And there was some discussion about some of the roads potentially getting a grant for it. Was it the remaining of the dog park? The roads.
Grant?
Yeah,
in the
I
borrowing.
think you were referring to the potential for the parking lot on the backside.
Yes.
And a federal grant that Barbara and I had talked to the congressman's office about. I think.
So-
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm thinking.
That
Okay.
number is,
Because of the stormwater and everything, the price is over $1 million, so.
so that number is in 2026, because we discussed the grant. So if we decide that we do get the grant or we don't get the grant, we can revisit in 2026.
So what will be there, so when the park is done, what's going to be there? Because we need to have parking in the meantime.
What are we talking about?
What
The
park?
New Britain.
Dog park.
No,
Oh.
no,
I'm
no,
talking
no,
about the
no.
Britain
New
parking
Britain
lot.
Road.
We're talking about the New Britain parking
talking
lot.
about the
That was the
Britain Park-
conversation with the congressman's office.
And the parking
and
lot,
Yeah.
what will be
No.
there?
In 25, this is what we have now. The
Right.
spaces that we have.
Correct, we're not doing anything in 25.
So how many spots are there now?
I'm not sure, 90, if that?
90?
Yeah,
That's what you were going to be, I thought that was
No,
the
we were
plan.
adding
that
like
was
100,
planned.
we were 100 like, we were 100,
no,
adding
100
like 100.
additional.
100,
okay.
so you want to have 200, almost 200 total in that spot?
Yes.
So
So we have
will we
100
be able to service the park with the current 90 here based on all the expansions? Because I guess my concern is this. You know, I love that we found surplus money. I love that we're trying to do a lot of things, but I think we need to be realistic about the project right in front of us, which is the current CRC project. We've committed to it, we're on it, and if we're going to do it, we need to fund all those things. That includes parking and people's safety. So we need to find that money and work within our tax base and among the money in our revenue. So for me, and then I think we also need to be mindful before we keep adding things that we take care of the things that we've already committed to. That parking lot, if we have an event, we only have 90 spots, and you're saying you need another 100, we're a designated regional park. So where are people going to go? We already know Doylestown Lee is not interested in having people park in their neighborhood. So I think I love that we're trying to get a grant, and I appreciate the effort, but I think we have to be prepared to have parking.
Well, I don't think we can afford to be penny wise and pound foolish. When there's an opportunity for us to be able to receive grants, and a good opportunity for us to receive grants, I think jumping into it without thinking, in order
This is practicality.
in order to satisfy, a want at this point.
Well, the want
I
was the
think-
CRC, Jen. The now is we have a responsibility. We've made a commitment to the community.
I
to
believe
spend-
everyone around this table agrees with you on that.
Okay, but my point is, there needs to be parking for those people. We're going to have handicap parking. We're going to have, what did we say?
We
20
do.
We're going to, 25% are 65 and older, and we need lighting, we need parking. And if you're saying you need an additional 100 spots, pushing it out until, what's the date that you have it for, me right?
2026.
2026?
Next fiscal year.
So I'm just concerned of this, from a safety perspective.
So for a safety perspective, I believe we are considering all of that.
So let's address the Park and Rec building and the courts, the improvements. That parking was designed to handle those facilities, okay? I don't think you can take New Britain Road parking lot, and while, yes, it's in the park, and the park is contiguous, that you can, that serves those fields up there, and then anybody else, when we have concerts, that park there and walk down. So, yeah, are we underparked? Yeah, we're historically underparked in every park that we have, not only including Central Park, Turk,
I know we
and all
are.
the other ones, for their use. So, but at the cost, and again, let's remember, when we had the building there, it was $1.3 million to do the site improvements. We're at 1.4 million. We're at the same number. We're just how many more years down the road? So it's not getting any cheaper. There's things we can do. We're trying to talk about what's our threshold for improvements, so we don't have to do all the stormwater, but at the same time, we still have to address stormwater because we have to follow the rules and regulations. So there's a threshold there, and I understand there's a need there. It's just a matter of what's the balance right now, and I think the conversation with my park staff, when we talked about the concerts and not having that parking lot done, they basically said, we will make sure that people park and they'll park safely, and we'll get them to and from the parking, which we put them up on the grass and got them down, and they got back this year, and we had, from my understanding, no incidents. We light the paths, we purchased lights, we had requests to basically light the path out to Kutz. We did that. So we are trying to work within what we have to get it done. And I'd like to get it done because then that puts a ball around that it gets it done. But I think with the projects we have and money,
Okay,
we have to push it out.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I just wanted to put that out there. I also wanted, when I look at, these are just my observations of the budget in general. The other thing, when I look at some of the things under the funding, and there's a lot of things that are underfunded, I haven't seen anything about how we can, I'm looking for ways we can save money or we can be more creative. So I started to talk about the bike trails a little bit, and one of my concerns is maybe it's the way we do the process, and it's always been this way. I love the enthusiasm of our committees, but we're presented a bike trail after they've applied for a grant, and then we're committed to either the engineering fees, but we shouldn't feel committed. We should say, does it fit within? Is there a budget within for bike trails? There's a huge.
We're not
I'm just
committed to
gonna
it.
finish.
That's what we're talking about today, whether or not we do trails when they come to us and we vote on them. Just because the committee brings them doesn't mean we're committed to them.
And that's what I'm getting to, Dan.
And it comes to the board.
Well, that's what I'm getting to. So when you see them and you see that they're either underfunded or we're then committed, because it then becomes, it's not just the engineering, but then it's also the maintenance. But it also pays a price because when we had that comp plan done on the Park and Rec, there's different parks that went pavilions, there's different parks that are looking for fields and lights. And if you look at, I don't know what the total number is in trails, it's a pretty big number. And my point is, like, philosophically, where do we want to be? Because I don't know if we're serving the best interest by only focusing on trails. We're the leader in trails. Are there any other townships? I mean, Stephanie was featured in the PSATs for the 30 miles of trails that we have. So I'm just saying, I think there's an excess, and I don't want to be the bad guy, but I'm going to say it because I feel that we're not serving all the needs by only having trails. And that I think it's very trail heavy in our budget.
So I have to take a little bit, I have to make a correction. We are not only focusing on trails. I think we've seen that evidenced by the Community Rec Center and the Central Park project. That is not trails. That is a commitment that this board has made. But we've also made a commitment to our community to make it something that is an attractive community for people to come and live. And if you look at actually, you work in real estate. Walkability is a huge asset to properties, right?
Absolutely.
So
But so are people's taxes. And they're-
Can you not interrupt, please? Crosstalk is very difficult.
So trails are important in that walkability score, right? So for me, I think for the health of the community, for the interest of property values, it is important, and I think it's a worthwhile investment. And that's what we do here, like right now during budget session, is when we just determine what are our priorities. And for me, the path structure is important, and it's important to make sure that we connect everything as well and not leave them unconnected, because that is what's going to, I think that's the end goal. The end goal is to make sure we have connected paths.
So I would agree, walkability is great. I don't believe some of these trails have been organic from some of these neighborhoods. Let's give the example of Easton Road Trail, where it's coming up through the borough and going up to the business. We were told originally it was for Doyle's Den Hunt. Now, I think Tom said it was really to benefit businesses. I don't know if, I wonder if there's a way that maybe the county can be more involved. I just feel that our taxpayer dollars are going to all of these trails when there's other needs, and we have this building, we have parking, we have, an entire list from the Park and Rec of the pavilions. Kathy, you guys worked so hard on that beautiful list for all the parks of their needs, and, wayfinding isn't even coming out for, and the pavilion isn't coming out until 27, or, so some of these things, and my other concern, so that's just one concern, and then the other thing is really planning for that rainy day, because we also know that the firefighters and EMS, there's a shortage. So I feel like, I love that you found like we're pretty close, but I think we should be underspending, knowing what's coming, and we don't know what everything's going to cost, and as well as be prepared for a rainy day. That's just my feeling about the budget in general.
I agree with your points, and I'm actually glad you kind of made me one of the pieces that I wanted to talk to the board about was making that this priority worksheet is, I made the priorities how I would, if I wanted some guidance from the board. So you'll see safety is number one, and most of those are getting funding. Right here, you'll see the net of about $300,000, and there's, most of that is just one of those things, sorry, I have funding. Right. So to me, I think if safety is first, and then we go to maintenance, because like you said, we create these roads, these trails, the basins, we have to maintain them. Mm-hmm. So another piece of, it's a little higher because this is where your road tax comes in. We had MS4 that was heavy in 2024. And then we moved on to trails, replacement, and beneficial. So that's kind of how we met with the department heads and kind of helped make those decisions on what was moving forward. Regarding trails, we had already had the grants in place. We had already agreed, the board had already agreed to move forward. And I think we've already had this discussion with, Stephanie about, we need to talk through moving forward with trails, or with Dave with the green light goes, when we need to be a little more conservative with the spending until we discuss the further years, which does bring me to my next point of, if you go to the second page of that, where we talk about 25 to 28 totals and the 26 to 29 totals, you'll see our capital spending is almost at $20 million from 25 to 28, and the unfunding, and yes, the parking lot is in there. There's things that could change that number as we cut programs, move programs, et cetera. But that's something that we are going to talk in depth at our October 15th meeting, because we need to discuss funding for capital in 26. Right. We were very fortunate that I'm coming to the board with a forecast of a surplus, but we don't know from year to year if that's going to be there. So it's something that I don't want to get into a huge discussion now moving forward, but it is something that we want to talk about in October 15th.
And I would just say, my thought about trails is, I think it's great to say we have this grant, but it doesn't mean we have to accept it. Sometimes it's not a good fit anymore. Now that we know, because I know how long it takes to get to this point where
Well,
we are.
that's a vote that will be put in front of us at the time. We don't have to discuss that here.
Well, I just want to finish my thought, because we just said we're not going to interrupt each other, is that if there is those things, we don't have to accept them. It could save that chunk of money and get us in a place. And I'm just picking on trails because it's the easiest one. It could be anything. My point is, I think we need to be thinking more conservatively and work within our tax base. We just talked about adding staff. We're talking about some unknowns with the Park and Rec. And if we've made that huge commitment that's being taxpayer funded predominantly, we really need to be mindful of that. And like I said, my other concern really is that safety of firefighters and EMS that's coming down the line, and we know that's coming. So I'd love to see some proactive suggestions and solutions, and I do really appreciate the way you organize this, Anne Marie, because it is helpful to see, and obviously safety is always going to be number one for us. And yeah.
Well, as it relates to the budget, is there anything else you need from us related to this?
I would just like to say, and Anne Marie, correct me if I'm wrong, the grants that are in here for trails have already been committed by the township. Those documents have been signed, you approved them at previous public meetings, and those are moving forward. And, you know, there are neighborhoods off of Turk Road that are your residents that attend regularly at the bike hike meetings, and they want to have access to get into the borough, and the borough wants to get access to come to Central Park. And you have to go back to the goals set forth in the early 90s by the bike hike committee. And that's a joint committee that has now expanded to include other municipalities. Then you've attended those meetings, and you know, and other communities are building trails to connect to our trails. And that walkability, as Jen talked about, that is what folks want to see, and they want to see it expand. And the county has stepped up and is doing quite a bit in expanding trails throughout the county and in our community as well. So we're all kind of working together to make our community more walkable, and it's what attracts residents to our community.
Well, 30 miles is a tremendous achievement, I would say, and I also think we need to be mindful that it wasn't until 2 years ago that we'd even discussed the maintenance of those trails, which we're now contending and is a pretty big number on our budget, because I think originally we started at 40,000, and then now what are we up to?
About 120 to 130-ish.
Yeah, it's
Per year?
Yeah.
Per year,
Yes.
correct? So I'm just saying that, you know, there's lots of things, lots of wants, but I just think we need to really be mindful of moving forward of our continuing to add to our budget.
Thank you, Nancy. I think we'll discuss this when we get, especially if we get a grant. I'm sure it'll come up again during a regular
I would
supervisor
appreciate
meeting.
maybe us being able to have a conversation about the process, because when we're already handed the grant, I don't want to shortchange the efforts that the committee has put in. I think we need to, as a board, excuse me?
Sorry. We can vote on the grants as they come to us, on the applications that.
Or
Bike and
before
Hike
they,
puts-
yeah, thank
No.
you. That would make sense.
Well, we always do that. We always get the opportunity, and then we decide whether or not, and then we vote. That's what we're going to do going forward.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else that we'd like to address? Oh, Kathy? What, you have to take a microphone, I'm sorry.
Working? Is it? Okay, yeah. To address the trails and address the fact that I've been a part of Park and Rec for 30 years, doing everything. And the one thing I see with those trails is even the new one along South Main or whatever, near all of those, you see kids riding bicycles to school. you see adults older than me walking. You see people in between. So that is one thing that we can do that truly connects not only the community physically, but the residents, and gives them the opportunity to get out and maybe walk to a business or walk to one of our parks or get to one of our parks that they haven't been able to get to. So it's invaluable.
I'm not against trails. I just think we need to put a financial component or some kind of guardrails around what we're doing when we have, I mean, you're looking at us at a budget meeting. I'm just using that as an example. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy. All right, if there is no other business, I guess we have our next steps.
So we'll be back here October 15th at 5 o'clock. Just some of the topics that we're going to talk about is the 2025 plan, and then the outer years up to 2029, and millage plan would be accompanied by that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody, for all your hard work in this budget session, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Of course.